Call the December 11, 2018 work session meeting of the Portsmouth City Council to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke. Here. Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Mayor Rowe.
Here. Dr. Patton.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. During the City Council's retreat in February, members of City Council asked the City Manager to have the City's Development and Review Team to examine the City's existing procedures and policies relating to development and redevelopment. Tonight, you will receive a presentation on the City's Integrated Development Review process. The presentation will be made by Interim Deputy City Manager Bob Baldwin and Director of Engineering and Technical Services, Mr. James Wright. Mr. Doug Smith cannot be with us this evening. There was death in his family, but Mr. David Kent is sitting in his stead in case there are some questions. Tonight's presentation will cover the permitting process from project concept through obtaining the building permit. Also during the presentation, there will be 3 short video presentations developed by staff to have include engineering, planning, zoning, permits and inspections, and marketing. Mrs. Crystal King, Marketing Assistant, is the narrator of the videos. Tonight is the first airing of the videos that will be uploaded tomorrow on the city's website. These informational videos serve as a part of the city's new overall effort to provide information to property owners and the development community. We'll start with Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Dr. Patton.
You're welcome.
We're doing keyboard, we're doing. Going with this. Good evening, Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Simmons, members of City Council. As Dr. Patton stated, the purpose of tonight's presentation is to give City Council an overview, perhaps a little bit of detail of how our process works, and what we really want to describe is a process that goes, and we'll talk about new construction, but this would also apply to redevelopment or major expansions. This is a process that would use from the point at which someone comes in the door, indicates they're interested in doing something, all the way through to obtaining their building permit. As the title of the presentation, we want to make it clear the process we use is integrated. There are various departments, quite a number of departments involved in the review process. Certain departments have regulatory authority for certain aspects of the process that happen at certain points. And I'll just make one comment that while the processes as we present them to you tonight will look like, step by step by step, in reality, most developers do this concurrently. They're involved in multiple aspects of the permitting process at the same time to try to, compress time and accelerate their way to their permit.
Now, Bob. Go back to the title. This is new construction. This is not adding on a room to the house.
Well, this will be if you're doing major. We have a different process. If it's something like adding a room onto a house, a much simpler process. We'll discuss that as well. This is primarily looking at new construction or major expansion. But if it's a single-family dwelling, we've got a more streamlined process for single-family homes than we would do, say you're building a shopping center or some sort of an office building or something of that nature. So this is really looking at that. But processes are relatively the same. I'll make this comment that requirements aren't the same for everything you're doing in every location for every kind of project. And that's one of the reasons this process is integrated, to make sure that people are moving through the steps they need to move through for what it is they're trying to accomplish, whether it be something simple like an addition or something more complicated like a shopping center or an apartment complex or something of that nature. And so I'll start off in this is, if you think about, the first step in the process, someone walks in the door and it's pretty much, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to do it, can I do it? And that's really the trigger. And we do try to recommend, especially on the zoning side, On the planning side, pre-application meetings, help people come in before you spend money, having plans developed, come in so we can talk through, what you want to do and go over what the zoning requirements would be. And quite often people do that, but it's not always. A lot of people are familiar with the process, don't bother with the, coming in the first step. So when we talk about process integration, again, we're talking about there are multiple regulatory reviews involved. Again, we're trying to take somebody from, I want to do something to getting an actual building permit in hand. And this incorporates a number of local, state, and federal regulations that are applied throughout the review process, and many of these you'll find to be beyond the city's authority to modify. We must comply with these mandatory state and federal laws. Again, this is a review process from concept to the building permit. And again, this is a collaborative process. The three primary departments you'll hear about in here are going to be planning and zoning because of the zoning requirements, engineering and technical services, which is really our site plan component, and then of course the permits and inspections, which is the building permit component. Again, these are sort of the three primary steps we go through, keeping in mind that again, we try to do as much of this as we can simultaneously, because a lot of times you need to know what is going on one side of the permitting process as it might affect the other. So I'm going to start off with the planning and zoning side. I think this is the side that spent a fair amount of time talking to City Council, our zoning requirements. You're probably fairly familiar with a lot of this, but we'll go. So somebody comes in the door, we're going to sit there and look at what they're proposing to do, and we'll talk about our zoning and subdivision ordinance requirements. And those are the two of the primary city codes that the planning department is responsible for. Again, as we've had our recent exercise with City Council looking at use table, one of the first things we're going to do is look at a use determination. What is it you're trying to do? Make sure we understand what the proposal is. We want to be able to discuss what any type of special requirements might be applied out of the zoning ordinance people need to be aware of. They may ask questions about parking requirements or questions about signage, things of that nature. So we try to make sure, in the zoning determination we talk about that. There are other aspects of the zoning piece we talk about. If there's been conditional zoning that City Council's approved, we want to make sure they're aware of whatever conditions might have been approved as the proffer that would be applied in the process. If there's been a conditional use permit, for example, with a convenience store or a drive-through multifamily housing project, we want to make sure they're aware of the conditions. Quite often we'll get developers that will come in that weren't maybe involved in the original rezoning and may or may not be 100% clear on conditions that are attached to the property that they would need to comply with. And then we also talk about any parcel modifications and some of that on the non-conforming lots we talked about recently. Any need to
Bob, typically, who's the we? In other words, Mr. Developer comes in, who do they see first, and how does that interaction kicked off? Okay,
well, typically they're going to go to one of two places, and they're all within the planning department. People who haven't dealt with the city a lot will typically come into the zoning administrator's office. They'll come in there and discuss with the zoning administrator. Some of the larger developers or people we deal with, a lot of times they may know, for example, they might need a use permit or had a use permit, and they may want to come over to the planning department and have some conversation with the planning department if it has to do with something that would have required a use permit or some larger project or something that's been in the works for a number of years. They know there's some background to the planning side of the office. And quite often, as we'll get down to this, if they're in the historic district, if they're in the downtown design district, they'll end up talking to the planning side where our staff is that handles those two aspects. If we start looking at the property involved and it's got either they're in a designated Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act area, in particular an RPA, or if they're covered by a flood zone, we'll take them to the specific individuals who handle those programs. And those are integrated. I'll tell you, the Chesapeake Bay program is a planning department, engineering department integrated function. We typically talk on the planning side about the land use aspect of it, and then the engineering department will talk about the site plan, stormwater management aspect of it, something they'll get into. So to answer your question, they could go either way, and because our department works very closely together, we will move them to whoever they need to see.
So as you gain knowledge of what they're looking for, you hand them off?
We'll walk them over, is what we do.
department in on the conversation.
Right, so they may come in and say, look, I've got an idea, I want to do a project, and it turns out as we talk to them, they're in an area they're in a flood zone. And we'll pull that up on the city, maps, and we can see the flood map, and go, uh-oh, you're in the flood zone. We want to make sure you talk to Meg Pittenger, who was our flood program manager, and say, so Meg can sit down and go, here are the requirements you're going to have to comply with on the flood zone. And that can be anything from somebody wants to do, modification in their house, all the way up to new construction. And so that becomes a critical piece. And so as we get more and more environmental regulations in place, that aspect of it, we have more and more technical staff that gets involved in it, but we know to move people to where they need to go. So there isn't a one person who has all of this, although everyone knows enough to get you to where you need to go throughout the process, or what kind of information you might need to bring in with your application. So for example, in our department, we have zoning administration, we do the flood program, we do Chesapeake Bay program, historic districts, downtown design district, plus the regular zoning aspects as well. And so we make sure you get who can help you the most. Quite often they may come in, for example, let's say they want to do an apartment project or multifamily. They may start at the zoning administrator and say, this is what I want to do. And then the zoning administrator will talk to them about the requirements and then bring them over to the planning side to discuss use permit requirements. And so we'll move them that way. We also, if we're aware there's going to be a stormwater issue related to it, or we want to make sure they're aware that the engineering department handles the questions they might have on the technical side of site plan, and also that the building official and the permits and inspections department will handle the building design permitting, the actual structure itself. So as I was mentioning, I think we're all recognizing a lot has changed in recent years. Just since 2014, 2015, stormwater requirements have changed. We certainly know the flood program has changed and is likely to continue to change over time as more information comes in. Over the years, things get updated. So we recognize that our permitting program and the city's regulations will have to modify as that happens. Also, if the state changes, we know we're a Dillon rule state, so anytime the state goes in and changes a requirement, for example, we'll talk now about dealing with 5G technology and the exemptions both the state and the federal government are putting into our permitting process to make sure we understand how that process works. So that's pretty much the zoning side. That's the step one. Quite frankly, no one gets into the site plan or into the building permitting unless they're for sure that the use they're proposing is allowable. So they come in and say, I want to build this industrial project in this residential area. You don't need to do a site plan. You're not going to need to submit building plans because you're not going over there because it's not permitted. And so that's why they start with the zoning pieces. We deal with is that use permitted in that location? To put it in simple terms, the first question is, can you do that where you want to do it? And then after that, it's, what are the regulatory requirements to actually build it in compliance with all the city, state, and federal requirements. As Dr. Patton had mentioned, we've been working on recognizing that sometimes this can be confusing. Sometimes the terminology can be a little bit off-putting, and sometimes people aren't sure exactly where to engage in the process to ask for help. We're trying to work maybe a little bit more, a lot more customer service. I hate to say friendly, but more, make people more aware of what's available to them, because first thing we want to do is, because it's gotten so complicated, make sure people are aware who to come in and talk to, especially on the front end. The sooner you talk to staff, the less likely you are to make some sort of a mistake in designing something or doing something you don't need to be doing if you aren't clear on that.
Bob, when you talk about handing off somebody like to Ms. Pittenger for flood information, do you really mean, and I don't mean to be so specific, but is it like the Nordstrom model of you literally say, instead of saying you need to see Pittenger and she's over there in some other office, do you literally say, come with me?
You literally walk them over. In fact, Ms. Pittenger's desk is right next to our zoning staff, so we try to keep them right up front. They're also next to the permitting counter. So people come in those general questions, there's not a long trip. But if they hit something that's like a historic district or downtown design, and that's over in the planning department where we're around the corner, they're walked over around the corner. And in fact, the staff stays there until the handoff actually physically happens. That the staff person comes up and they say, I'm talking to so-and-so, they've asked about such and such, and they're in the Parkview district, and they need to talk to you about getting a certificate of appropriateness, and that's our handoff. And so we don't, old days, yes, more common, like you need to go talk to whoever, but if you go up there today, you'll see people are being walked around the 4th floor to make sure they're getting to where they need to be, because we have people that are in different places you need to talk to, and we want to make sure you get to the right person. And so that way, like I said, we try to have them have that direct contact, and also it allows the zoning person, if there's been some discussion, to explain, to say, Ms. Pittenger, here's what they're talking about they'd like to do, because obviously they're aware of the flood regulations as well, so they can give a little bit more of information to start that conversation. So that's the way we hand off. We don't just, good luck, hopefully they're down there. Maybe somebody's there, maybe they're not. We don't like to see people wandering on our floor.
They don't.
You know, we'll make sure you're getting, in fact, you'll also find if we see somebody standing around the elevators, always someone's going to come up and say, do you need some help? Because we'll see people kind of spinning around. Sometimes they're not sure which department. So we try to make sure, based on their question, which department to go to. So as we indicated, we're trying to work on some of these public information videos. I'd like to, hopefully this will play. We'll go to our first one.
This is the City of Portsmouth Can Do series. What can the Portsmouth Planning Department do for you? Today's video topic is zoning clearance. What do you need a zoning clearance for? Everything. Well, almost everything. Most forms of development require the review and approval of a zoning compliance permit prior to the issuance of a building permit, business license, or certificate of occupancy. We can help you with determining permitted uses, construction project requirements including setbacks, fence permits, sign permits, and business license clearances. To complete the application process, please contact the staff in the zoning office to discuss your project, file an application with the required information. Applications are available online or in the Department of Planning. While examining your project, other reviews may be prompted. If additional information is required, staff will inform you if the project will be administratively reviewed or requires review by the Board of Zoning Appeals. If approved, you will receive a zoning clearance and can obtain the necessary permits or begin your project if permits are not required. If your project is denied, you may file an appeal with the Board of Zoning Appeals. You will also need to provide specific documentation for review of your project, including a completed zoning compliance permit application, a current site plan or physical survey displaying the location of the buildings on the property, setbacks, easements, driveways, flood zones, and dimensions of the property, 2 sets of construction plans, and a site plan. And last, a copy of an approved certificate of appropriateness if located within the downtown design district or within a historic district. Documentation needed will vary depending on the type and complexity of the project. We are here to help you. For more information, contact zoning at 757-393-8522 or visit us on the web at www.portsmouthva.gov.
Very nice.
So we've started off creating, we'll call this a template for how we're going to do, future public information. That was the first one.
It even sounds friendly.
So we'll move on to the next part of our presentation. That's going to come from Mr. Wright, who's going to talk about the site plan process. And again, as I mentioned, while we kind of walk through these things concurrently, most of these processes are done simultaneously.
And before you sit down, any questions on this part?
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Member of City Council. I'm here to talk about site plans. Site plans are submitted to the Department of Engineering and Technical Services. Upon their submittal, they're assigned to a review engineer and routed to all the departments that are involved in site plan review that are in the operations portfolio. Those departments include planning, zoning, floodplain manager, building department, public utilities, fire department, public works, engineering, and occasionally parks and recreation. Site plan review covers a broad spectrum of technical requirements that are included in 8 local ordinances. The review also includes verification of applicable state and federal regulations. For example, the review team evaluates compliance with the local and state stormwater management program, access and traffic management, including traffic signal warrants and the installation of required utilities. Since 2014, there have been a number of new regulations that the review team must consider when evaluating a site plan. The new stormwater management regulations are the most impactful. A lot of the things that were previously done by the state, either on the review side or actually during construction, have been passed down to the local program. All qualifying land disturbing activities must be evaluated. The threshold for land disturbance is 2,500 square feet. Depending on what you're doing in a roadway, certain work within roadways is subject to stormwater management. How they look at pervious and impervious is no longer the case now. It's forested and open space, managed turf, and pervious. And so they come in 3 different categories now when you're looking at when you're doing your stormwater
Say
calculations.
those categories again.
So it's forested and open space, it's managed turf, and it's impervious. When before it was just impervious and pervious. So managed turf is areas that are cut at least 2 times a year. So anybody that has a lawn, it's managed turf.
Managed turf.
So your natural condition is basically untouched, forested and open space.
So that's managed space.
And so nutrient reductions, which is reduction of your phosphorus and nitrogen loading, apply to all projects, not just those projects that are in the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area. Prior to this ordinance, you just looked at those areas that were in that specific area. Now it's citywide. And those reductions are achieved through a reduction in runoff volume. And there are scenarios for both redevelopment and development. City projects are not exempt, and they must go through stormwater review. So there's some other parts of the process. The initial, we tell applicants when they typically come in, is that your initial review will take 4 to 6 weeks. There are a couple of regulatory guidelines that come into play. Stormwater rules allow 15 days for a completeness determination. So when the plan comes in, every department looks at it, but specifically stormwater determine if everything is included. You notify the applicant that the application is complete. If it's, say, a dreadful application, you stop. But typically, most you just let them know the components that are missing. You continue on with the review. Erosion and sediment control review. For your initial review, if you don't review and respond to the applicant within 45 days, the plan is considered approved. For stormwater management, it's 60 days. So if you don't respond within 60 days to the applicant, his plan is considered approved. Our average review time for the initial review is 22 to 25 days. The average time in the region is 21 to 35 days. We're actually on the low end. All review comments go to the design engineer and also to the owner. Site plan approval will depend on the responsiveness of their engineer to the comments and the timing of when he gets them back. It's extremely rare for an applicant to achieve site plan approval on the first submittal. In the time that I've been here, I can think of one that was approved with conditional approval, one that was approved as noted. I can't think of any that have been approved upon first submittal. So you can at least expect to go through 2 cycles of review when you submit your site plan.
Is that just due to the complexity?
You're likely to miss something, most likely. And there's so many different departments and regulations change. The engineering community doesn't always keep up with the changes there. And so you're likely to come up with just something that we can't approve the plan for. So that.
You know, because some of these things are complex and there are a lot of steps involved, even in the zoning process, is there like a checklist that we give?
We don't get.
Or we monitor?
If you come in, we'll meet with you. We'll hand out a checklist. But if you go to the engineering webpage, all the site plan requirements on the webpage, with our site plan general notes, notes about the stormwater management plan, notes about the erosion sediment control plan, and other information that are on the website that will help you get through the site plan process. There are links to all that information on our webpage. Okay, after site plan approval, the contractor for the owner may pick up engineering permits and post any required bonds for the project. We can post bonds. Well, we're allowed to take bonds for right-of-way work, stormwater management, and also for erosion sediment control. A land disturbance permit, which we issue through our department, is required prior to the issuance of a building permit. And this is the video.
Welcome to the City of Portsmouth Can Do series. What can engineering and technical services do for you? Today's topic is site plan review. Site plans are required for commercial, residential, and industrial development and redevelopment projects. Prospective developers are encouraged to obtain site plan requirements and other information from the engineering department after meeting with the Department of Economic Development and zoning officials. We can help you with benchmark and historical site information, site plan requirements and notes, identifying city infrastructure, stormwater requirements, and requirements for traffic impact analysis. Some may ask, what exactly is a site plan? A site plan is a detailed engineering drawing submitted so the technical and design details of individual development proposals can be reviewed and approved in a comprehensive and coordinated manner. Site plans usually show a building footprint, walkways, parking, drainage facilities, utilities, site access, lighting, and landscaping. Site plan requirements are governed by sections of the City Code pertaining to development. Documentation needed will vary depending on the type and complexity of the project, which may include site plan copies, stormwater management plan, drainage and utility calculations, traffic impact analysis, and geotechnical reports. Site plans are submitted to engineering, then routed to various departments in the city's operation portfolio for their technical review and comment. The site plan review process includes: the site plan is submitted for city review by the applicant's engineer. The engineering department will route the site plan for technical review. A determination of all required components will be made within 15 days. Site plan comments are then returned to engineering and a combined review is provided within 25 days. This process will continue to determine if the observations were addressed, leading to the plan's approval. An approved site plan is required to obtain building permits. Site plan requirements can be accessed on the Department of Engineering and Technical Services webpage. For more help and information, contact us at 757-393-8592 or visit us on the web at www.portsmouthva.gov.
Questions, comment,
Just
Lisa?
one little question. With the site plans that the developers give to the Department of Engineering, how long do you keep them on? I mean, I know you're not a library. Do they come back and get them, or do you just keep them on site for a period of time?
We generally keep everything because
We've got so much.
a lot of work happens in the right-of-way, and for historical context to know what happened. So we have plans that date back to some plans that go back to 1900s, some to 20s and 30s, just so we can know what was there that we may encounter as we either a developer goes to develop the property or the city goes to develop the property. So we tend to keep everything. We have only a certain amount of space in our department where we keep stuff, but we also have off-site storage at Public Works.
All right.
Questions?
So The process to get a building permit is coordinated by the Department of Permits and Inspections. They review and approve the building construction plans. For the purpose of this presentation, we're focusing on new construction, additions and alterations. Also involve disciplines such as electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. They're ensuring that the design is in compliance with the uniform statewide building code and the required zoning elements. And there's also, at the end, once you get your building permit, if it can be approved, they're responsible for the Certificate of Occupancy program, which basically ensures that your final product is in compliance with the building codes and that the condition of the structure or addition is safe for the people to move into. And the video for permits and inspections.
Welcome to the City of Portsmouth Can Do series. What can permits and inspections do for you? Today's video topic is how to obtain a building permit. A building permit is required for the construction or demolition of almost any residential, commercial building, or structure. Some examples include swimming pools, any part of a wall or structural component, alteration of any element of a required exit, installing or modifying of any water or sewer system, HVAC system, fuel supply or fire protection system, and removal or disturbance of any asbestos-containing material. There are some exceptions to the building permit requirements. More information can be found on our website or by calling the Department of Permits and Inspections. The question is often asked, who may apply for the building permit? Primarily, permits will be obtained by your building contractor. However, in certain circumstances, the property owner may obtain their own permit. Obtaining a building permit and its required inspections is only part of the development process. In fact, it's the last step. One of the first steps in obtaining a building permit is submitting a site plan for approval through zoning. There may be many components to this approval, which may require a certificate of appropriateness for historic districts. The planning department staff can guide you on the approval process. Other permits that may be required include a land disturbance permit and a right-of-way permit from the engineering department. Finally, any new water and sewer connection will require water and sewer tap fees to be paid in the Public Utilities Department on the second floor of City Hall prior to obtaining your building permit. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of coordination and collaboration with city departments before a building permit can be issued, but we are all here to help you navigate the process. For any new addition or structure, a building permit application along with one copy of a site plan, 2 full-size sets of construction drawings in hard copies, and a soil report indicating the type and the bearing capacity of the soil on the site are required. Drawings are required to be drawn to scale and can include a foundation plan and a floor plan, a braced wall plan and wall sections, as well as elevations. Once the drawings and plans are reviewed and approved, the building permit can then be issued. Please note that fees for the permits are paid at the time of the issuance. Contractors are required to be properly licensed by the state of Virginia as well as their city. Separate permits will be required for plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and gas trades. The trade subcontractors should apply for their own permits. Once construction begins, certain inspections may be required, but the permits and inspection staff will help guide you through the process. We are here to help you. For more information, contact Permits and Inspections at 757-393-8531 or visit us on the web at www.portsmouthva.gov.
I'll add that since our processes are integrated, to save time, developers can opt to submit the building plans and the site plans at the same time for concurrent review. You just can't get your building permits until your site plan is approved. So even though they may be complete with your building, the review of your building plans, you can't get a permit until your site plans been reviewed and approved. And
Is a residential water heater, is a building permit required to replace that?
I'll defer that to Mr. Kent.
Only if it's a gas.
You can come
Go
to
up
the
so you
podium.
can say it up on the thing. Please.
To replace a residential water heater, you need a permit if it's a gas water heater, but not if it's electric.
And Mayor, you will need a permit if you're getting a gas stove. And it has to be, you get the permit, then it has to be inspected by the city's inspectors before you can use your gas stove. I know because I got a new gas stove.
Then gas insert for fireplaces,
Oh, yeah, you have to.
gas logs.
All gas. And they say gas trays.
And those, I take it that those installations need to be done by certified people?
Generally, yes. They need to be licensed.
Well, that was a qualified. When will it not be required?
A homeowner could apply for his own permit, and that would be granted, and then it would be up to him to, or her to get a qualified person to install it. We can't police what they do, but if a contractor applies for the permit, he has to be licensed and he has to have a gas specialty.
But let's say somebody that wants to convert their fireplace to gas logs, and they figured out how to do it, as long as it meets the building code.
And it passes inspection.
Yes.
Yes.
They can do it.
So that inspection, you come out to inspect it, if the homeowner is the one that did the installation, that's okay?
Yes.
Same way with a gas water heater, or?
No, a gas water heater has to be done by a contractor.
Okay, so
That's-
that was your hesitation in not doing a carte blanche that all of them have to be
Correct.
certified? Okay. Gas logs are okay, but water heaters aren't.
Correct.
Well, let's jump to the electrical side. How much can the homeowner do?
He's asking.
I know.
We'll give you a sidebar. We said he tried to do his own
Somebody
work.
seeking approvals.
No, I think this is good. This is being
It is.
televised.
I've got one for you.
No, seriously. I mean, can the homeowner, if she or he figures out how to put a wall receptacle in and runs the wire, is a permit needed for that?
Yes, a permit is needed for that, and the
But-
homeowner can get their own
Do it.
permit.
But if you were going to upgrade from 150 to 200,
Oh, God.
you need,
I would not recommend
Doing that.
homeowner doing that.
But I will tell you from example, I've known where that's been done because the person
Was the electric.
had the skills to do it, and which it was in another city, which of course it was just like anything else. The homeowner had to get the permit, it had to meet the inspections, and it had to pass inspection before Dominion would come out and do the service upgrade to the larger amp wire. So it is possible, but like you said, unless somebody is very skilled in that, they shouldn't be messing with it.
Right.
It makes our job a lot more difficult if they try to do it, and, you know.
You had some.
Fence permits, do you deal with those also?
What is that?
Well, see, I was noticing on the video, it seemed that the posts were facing out at the very beginning of Mr. Baldwin's video. And I know that problem from,
That was a picture of a zoning violation, in fact.
that's what I thought.
Picked it up.
An example of what not to
Require
do.
the finished side of the fence to face out.
Okay.
And the part with the bracing be on the inside. Not that everyone does that, because like my wife, they prefer to look at the nice side of the fence, but so that's not the way it's done.
so the solution is double-faced fence.
That is exactly it,
Double cost.
or a different style of fence.
I would comment that the building code does not require a permit for any fence except around the pool.
About around the pool. Good.
Any other infomercials?
That's it, Mayor. Those were the 3 areas of which the team presented tonight, and tomorrow they will upload the videos to the city's websites, making them available, and there will be information going out, letting the citizens and development persons know that.
And if we just to conclude, we did want to, there are some improvements to the process. We're continually trying to collaborate and work on ways to try to make easier what is not easy to begin with. So you're well aware of the first one. One of the things we can do is work on rewriting our zoning requirements to make them easier to understand, simpler, more streamlined. So you're well aware of that. After that, I'm going to let Mr. Wright speak to some of these other things we have going on.
So we have a process in place, and we have had for years for single family, what we call a single family site plan. If you're going to build a new home, there's a process, and the old process was typically you come in, it's your plot plan, you go to zoning, you go to planning, you come to engineering, you go to the building department. With all the regulations, you'd still make that loop around. When you got to our department, we verified everything was there, and then we'd say you'd have to come back in 2 or 3 days because we have to get through our review. It's that complicated. So walking around and having the person sit there and wait and sort of hover over the departments didn't seem like an efficient use of their time. So what we've done over the past 18 months to 2 years is work on those things that we need to see actually on that plot plan. All those departments that are involved in review, we developed a form and we tested it out with a builder that we're familiar with. And so what we have now is similar to what we do for a full-size site plan, the single point of entry. So now if you want to build a single-family home, you come in, you drop off all your materials from your zoning stuff to your site plan stuff that we need to your building stuff. We make sure everything's complete and we route it. Then we call you when the review is complete, and when you come back, you just go through and get your permits. And so that's one of the process modifications that we've done, just sort of to economize on that person's time. Also, as we noted in the presentation, that the stormwater rules are very complicated these days. Back when the rules were initiated, it was supposed to integrate Chesapeake Bay preservation, floodplain, erosion sediment control. They're all supposed to be integrated into one ordinance. The state was supposed to take the lead and sort of get out in front of us. They haven't done that to date, and so we've taken steps as staff so that we can try to simplify the process and make things clear to the development community, those things that we'll need to see. And so those are some of the things we're working on as far as those 2 ordinances are concerned. And then the public outreach, you saw the videos. We're also providing a lot more information on our own websites as far as things that people can access and read. And we're also, not everybody was aware that we have a standing meeting on Wednesdays for developers to come in and talk to us, not a meet and greet, but to talk to us about their projects so that we can answer, they can ask questions and we can provide feedback. And so just to get more information out to the public, that's one of the things that we've been trying to do. With that, I'll take any questions.
We need to look at our fees for these various applications and permits.
This is the 2019 budget. It was in the we're in the 2019 budget. In the 2017 budget, we addressed every fee during the budget time. So now we would be 2 years. So in the budget process, we will look at fees, look across Hampton Roads and other municipalities just to see how we are competitive and in line with what their fees are. And we look at that about every 2 years. So this year, coming up in the 2020, would be the time to do that.
Questions? Comments? Thank you.
All righty. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, that concludes our presentations for this evening. If I may, I can go to a review of the 12 city managers' report items.
Go ahead.
Okay. The first is precinct number 24 location change, and it's going to be adoption of an ordinance to amend section 10 107 of Chapter 10 of the Code of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia, 2006, as amended to change the voting location of precinct number 24 from Willard Hall to the senior station located at 3500 Clifford Street, and to formally change the name of the precinct number 24 to the senior station. The second, FY 2019 Child and Adult Care Food Program, and it's entitled Kids Meal Grant. It's adoption of an ordinance accepting Kids Meal Program Grant in the amount of $693,044.10 from the U.S. Department of Agriculture Child and Adult Care Food Program Administration through the Virginia Department of Education, and appropriated said funds for the FY 2019 Grants Fund by use of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Leisure Services to provide meals and snacks authorized under the Kids Meal Program. It is estimated that on a daily basis, the program serves under over 326 snacks, and per day, 1,271 meals. An ordinance to appropriate $1,820,000 to acquire the 206 High Street. It's an adoption of an ordinance appropriating $1,820,000 from the general fund unassigned fund balance for the purpose of acquiring 206 High Street. The Virginia Sports Hall of Fame building was constructed at 206 High Street in 2004. Town Bank, the lender of the project, recently recorded a deed in lieu of foreclosure to take title to the property. The property is currently vacant and occupies a crucial location on the High Street Business Quarter. An ordinance to adopt funds for loan to EDA. It's an adoption of an ordinance appropriating $5,150,000 from the general fund unassigned fund balance for the purpose of providing a short-term loan to the Economic Development Authority of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia. Approval of a short-term loan to EDA for property acquisition. It's adoption of a resolution authorizing a short-term loan to the Economic Development Authority of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia, in the amount not to exceed $5,150,000 for the purpose of acquiring certain property in settlement of litigation with Victory Crossing Developer 2, LLC, and further authorizing the execution of agreements and documents related to the said. Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission Bank Qualified Revenue Bonds. It's adoption of a resolution approving the issuance of not to exceed $4,800,000 tax-exempt Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission Bank Qualified Revenue Bonds to the CYA Sports and Community Center Project Series 219. And the next is a resolution to accept the FY 2018 audit report. Adoption of a resolution accepting the FY 2018 audit report to the City of Portsmouth. The next is an adoption of a resolution in support of ratification by Virginia of the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution. Members of council, during the November 27, 2018 meeting, during that city council meeting, council requested staff to prepare a resolution supporting the ratification of the ERA by the Virginia General Assembly for consideration at the next meeting, and that was brought to our attention by Councilwoman Lisa Lucas-Burke. The next is an adoption of a resolution endorsing the 2019 Virginia Municipal League legislation appropriation as requested by council to bring forward. The next is an adoption of a resolution endorsing the 2019 Virginia First Cities General Assembly legislative program, an item that was requested by council to bring forward. Those are the 12 items that are before you this evening.
Thank you. While we're on the agenda, we do have some special presentations, and I'll do them in this order. We have foster families. Dr. Holly talked about the Portsmouth family, and that has become part of our vocabulary. The family unit is such an important part of our social fabric. And we have children in our community who are at risk because they don't have a family. And the only family that they get is when we intervene and give them foster parents. And we have foster parents that have been doing this for a long time. And often, in addition to creating that family environment, these kids are adopted. And so, with your concurrence, let's start over the process of the next 12 months, recognizing families that do foster parent, and we'll start tonight. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah.
Very good.
It pulls on your heart strings. The second, the Deltas are celebrating their 75th birthday anniversary.
And you look great.
So all y'all wear red.
Didn't wear mine. Cool on me, I don't even know in there.
And then we have someone who is departing from our team, and that's Ray Smith. And we'll recognize you in the proclamation tonight. And I'd like to have a motion, too, that we have the proclamation incorporated in our minutes in its entirety.
Very good.
So after it's read.
I'll do that.
Okay. In a second.
I'll second.
Okay. We, last night, asked the city manager to start the process on an accelerated basis to put out an RFP for lobbying services. In addition to that, I recommend, and with council's concurrence, that we ask you to directly mail that package to lobbying firms, just in case they don't look at the newspaper. So it's easy to do. You can just Google Richmond, and you'll get a ton.
Yes, and we just looked, it is on the state's website already.
Yeah.
So we'll get to
I understand that, but I think the direct mail is really important.
Right.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Okay, we'll get that done.
Lastly, and not to steal what you want, Nate's brought to my attention, and he's bringing it tonight, Senate Bill 1030, which we need to consider because we made such a big deal, and it was really important that we get a second set of turnout gear. And we did that because of the health of our firefighters. We came to the conclusion that their exposure to what is in the smoke is injurious to health, to include causing cancer. That it's kind of, you're being two-faced to say, we'll do that, but we'll support this bill that says, you don't have to worry about smoke. It's not going to cause a problem. Nate?
Yes, and that's the information that came to me. And if you look, the main change on this, if you look at line 37, really the addition as it stands now, it says leukemia or pancreatic, prostate, rectal, throat, ovarian, or breast cancer. So what they're looking to add colon, brain, or testicular. And this is very important. 2 days ago, Sunday, been 1 year since we lost Lieutenant Ben Fuller from our fire department due to brain cancer. So this is something, like we all supported when we bought the turnout gear. We're trying to prevent them from getting cancer. So at the same time, I think we should support the legislation that will protect them and their families if they do get it.
Do you need time to study this, or can we come to a consensus and ask the city manager to write our General Assembly delegation, ask them to oppose this bill?
We're ready now.
Ready?
Well, it's to support it, not oppose it.
Support it.
Yeah, I was going to
Thank you for catching that. Now, we're just checking to make sure you guys were paying attention.
Right, right. So we'll
We have a
get letter
consensus
out
for that.
Yes.
Okay.
saying
All right.
we want support of this bill.
Dr. Patton?
Yes, sir.
We will support this bill.
Yes,
And if you'd write on behalf of City Council?
yes.
Okay.
We'll get that done in the morning.
All right.
I have one other item, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I had just one report back. On last night, Councilman Moody asked that we provide information on what was the exact amount of the grant that we received from the port for portside construction, and it was $109,650.
That's how much again?
$109,650.
Okay. I again, and I apologize to my colleagues because I haven't talked to you. We had a robust, and we always do, robust discussion about economic development. And will you join me in coming to a consensus that we ask the city manager to study the possibility of coming up with some way that we have a initial small flat fee for business license for new businesses for at least 1 year? And what we're saying is that your fee's going to be $50. And
For the business's first year. Not a year for the city, but.
no, for the business's first year. And because we want you to.
For new businesses?
Yeah,
Okay.
for new business to take off. And what we're asking you to do is study that
All right, okay.
and see if it's feasible. Does it make sense? Is it a good message to send? And we talked about small businesses being the backbone of the nation's economy, the state's economy, Portsmouth's economy. And if we can make it easy, much like we had a discussion tonight on how to get a permit, make it easy that first year. We want you to do well. We don't want you to fail in that first year. But the next year,
Go to the
does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that, any business? Amazon?
A new business.
Those are good
That's-
things.
Right, he wants us to
I mean, that
study
would
it and
make
come back. That's
We
what
would be
do.
so blessed to have Amazon.
Yeah.
For $50, I think, yes, let them go.
Right, we will, Mayor. Shoot.
But they got to be brand new. Yeah. Might be vape shops.
Oh, they're coming everywhere.
Yeah. And in that process, you might want to look and see what our competition is doing.
Okay.
And that's, I understand that the beach doesn't. That's why I bring it to us. This comes down to city council liaison reports, and we'll start with you, Ray.
No reports, but do want to let people know that if you're going to the PRHA meeting on Thursday, the 20th, they've moved the time from 5 o'clock to 1:30. So that's the 20th, December 20th.
PPIC and EDA met this morning and took actions that we will continue the action on tonight.
Hampton Roads Regional Jail, we actually don't meet until December the 19th next week, but I did want to give an update. I've been bringing this consistently. I just called today to get the number. We currently have 250 beds in that facility. We only have 193 filled today, so there's 57 empty beds that we're paying for in the regional jail.
Okay. There's a joint meeting of the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, HRTAC, and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, the HRTPO, on Thursday. And it's going to be an interesting meeting because one of the things that we're going to start off discussing is the ERC contract with the state. And
Wow, that's a good step.
yeah, but for a different reason that you might conclude. That contract contains a non-compete clause where ERC was able to say if there's a competing river crossing, then we get compensated unless it's tolled. And VDOT is driving to toll hot lanes on both the high-rise bridge and on the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And for the life of me, I can't see the competition there. If I need to go through the Midtown Tunnel to go to the Old Dominion Library, I'm certainly not going to go through Ocean View to get there. I mean,
No.
And so at some point in time, we need to take a stand on that and say this needs to be tested in court.
Interesting.
The other is the thing that Ray reported on when I couldn't make one meeting, and that is who's going to pay for the piers on the southern bridge
Trusses.
approach from Ocean View to the island, which is really deferred maintenance, which is about $400 million. And if it's 400 now in the estimate, it's probably going to be $500 million. And so those are the discussions. The Secretary of Transportation, the Highway Commissioner is coming down. And again, we talked about this last night, and you've seen the emails, and you're getting hit too. We need to make toll relief, again, part of our #1 priority, so that when we go up there for Legislative Day, this, oh no, here comes the Portsmouth folks. We know what they're going to say. Any other discussion, comments?
Can we, on toll relief, can we at least attempt to make that a regional effort?
Yes, I talked with Linda Johnson about having Dr. Cook brief them. She said she would. I need to follow up on that.
I think it'd be great if we could do a regional resolution for that.
We should be able to.
Let's do that. Can you communicate to the other city managers, and I'll do the mayors?
Yes, when council asked about Dr. Cook coming, I immediately called Patrick Smalls, and he was in agreement. Now that you have that, that the Mayor Johnson says yes, then we'll have Mr. Baldwin to reach out and get a time frame that in January that hopefully he can come over and make that presentation.
All right. Others? We have a need for a closed session. Oh, by the way, we have Deborah read the protocol for speakers, whether they're agenda or non-agenda. Non-agenda speakers can speak about anything. It doesn't have to be on the agenda. But agenda speakers speak to the issue that's before us. I'm going to remind the speakers who have signed up for agenda that the city code establishes Robert's Rules of Order as the procedure for running our meeting. That's section 2-75. And Robert's Rules of Order says that the discussion on the question has to be pertinent, has to be germane. And so I will state that to the speakers when on non-agenda. And you've asked me in the past to use the gavel when someone is talking about something that's not before us. Our motions are pretty clear, either to adopt the resolution or the ordinance or not to adopt. And if it's talking about something else, then it's not germane.
Got it?
Okay? All righty. Do we have a...
I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A-A7 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation. For such consultation, open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, specifically regarding claims and pending litigation for the first quarter of calendar year 2019.
Second.
We have a motion before us, which is to go into close meeting for certain items allowed under the law. It's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes. We are in closed session.